Welcome back. Today we are going to be looking at some brand new parts here to the Scx24 market. These come to the US from across the pond. These are Iceberg RC fully assembled portal axles for the Scx24. So these come with everything you need to get going except wheels and a servo tray. But other than that, they have bearings, axles, everything. We'll pop them open to see if they're pre-greased and take a closer look. And this was also in the package, a nice little note here from Iceberg RC. And they also include a 1/24 scale Iceberg. So that's pretty nice. So I've already reached out to Jeff there at Iceberg RC just to let him know I got these, and he was super nice and said to be careful and not to over tighten the diff covers. So that's one thing I'll look for when I'm installing these. But just from grabbing the pinion or the back of the worm gear, I guess, and spinning these axles spin super freely, so everything is unbound and moving nicely right now. So let's take a little closer look and get these on the scale as well and see what they weigh. Okay, let's get these guys up on the scale. So I've already zeroed it out, and then I got all the small little bits on there because those kept rolling off. So let's get the actual axles on there. See, we're fully on there. There we go. So that's some heft there. So 65.5 grams in the front, 49.2 for the rear, for 114.7. We'll flip to ounces. So 2.3 ounces in the front, 1.7 in the rear, 4 ounces total. So that was everyone's first question, is how much do these guys weigh? So now you know. Pretty good amount of heft, and that front axle assembly does not have a servo or a tray, so you're gonna be adding quite a bit more weight as well potentially. So that's a pretty good starting point, I would say. All right, here I've got just a comparison here to the Mofo Brass Portal kit on stock plastic axles versus this Iceberg RC, and then I've got a stock axle. So you can see here, get on the end here, they're pretty close. The Iceberg sits in a little further. That hex does have a pin in there, and it sits all the way in like that. So potentially problematic if you have a small diameter hole in the wheel. It's going to get caught on that end of the axle there. It won't fully seat. So that may be an issue. It just depends on how thick your wheel is as well, even if your wheel does fit over that. But I found that some wheels can't fully seat on the hex because it sits so far back rather than out like that, where you could fully tighten down, or just back just a little bit to allow for a little bit of width of the rim. But not a big deal. You'll just have to see. But other than that, there's your difference there. I mean, looks like we're going to be maybe 3 millimeters difference per side, so this will be a little bit narrower track. And then let me flip it around here. So you can see there against the stock housing. So that's kind of the width comparison. I may throw some stock wheels on both of those portals and just to see, but I believe it's probably going to be about a 3 millimeter difference per side. All right, let's take a look at these fronts all compared here. So I think I've got these about centered up on the diffs. So you can see kind of the difference in length would be that pin position. So I think the Mofo Portal kit is a +8, so I guess that would be to the pin. So maybe these are +5s, these Icebergs, +6s, I don't know, somewhere around there. And then of course here's the stock, no axles, but you get the idea. So these of course have the traditional C-arm carrier, traditional portal box scaled down. So I think the axle's in the same position, you know, being dropped from the diff and everything. The difference is you've got a lot more hanging down here than you would on this that uses more the knuckle over the C-cup rather than the C-arm carrier over the portal box. You can kind of see there, that's the difference. You've got a lot more drop in that Iceberg RC, but that is traditionally kind of how they look. So it does look like a scaled down little portal axle. So those are kind of the differences there on that front. Also the portal box, you can see from the pin to the brass portal box on Mofo, as far as wheel fitment, is pretty close. And then you can see on this one, it's, you know, you've got this small diameter, this little piece protruding. All this bulk is pushed further back, so hopefully that will aid in clearing wheels a lot easier. You can see how he chamfered his top edge to allow for wheels to clear that. So hopefully all of this sitting back will help, but we'll see when we get some mounted up here. So I think it's time to get this Iceberg portal set mounted up onto something. All right, I figured I'd pull this apart before I get it installed on the truck, take a look. And it does appear that there's a little bit of grease in there, and there are metal shims on each side of the worm gear. There's one there that's still in the diff. A little bit of red grease in there. This is good. So I'm assuming that the portal boxes are greased as well. We'll crack into those. And then the screws were in there with, felt like just a tad bit of Loctite. They had a good hold. Came out just fine, but you know, they weren't gonna, you know, unscrew on their own for sure. So let me pull one of the portal boxes and we'll take a peek in there. All right, so here's a peek in the portal box. And those do appear to be greased as well. So there are separate bearings, there are separate gears, and there are shafts as well. So there are multiple pieces. You can see there, I believe that gear is independent. It is. Yes, it is. And then you've got, oh, a little bearing on the end. A little tiny little bearing on the end. A little stop on the end of that axle. And then, yeah, this gear just slips on the end of that axle. Another bearing in there. So that's your assembly. So that's really typical, just kind of scaled down from what I've seen on the, you know, larger scale portal axles. So, you know, I don't know if I'm going to add more grease or just leave it as they ship it, because, you know, they know. So I may just leave it as is, run it, and just see, rather than cleaning it and putting in more grease, because I don't really want to dig into the front portals. What's nice is this comes as an assembly just ready to bolt up, so you know, you don't have to pull anything apart. You just install these guys and go. All right, got it put back together. Everything, put a little bit of Loctite on those screws that I took out, but that's what you want. That's smooth as butter. Just want to make sure it's good to go before you get it on the truck. No binding at all. So nothing's over tightened. Everything's turning smoothly. I think we're ready to go. All right, I think I've got the test truck here picked out. As you can see, I've got the high racks and the WT Micro island style wheels on there. So what I think I'm going to do is take it back to the stock wheels and tires, weigh it, and measure the track width, and then go ahead and install these with the stock wheels and tires first and measure the track width. And just so we can get apples to apples, just, you know, as this is the only thing we're adding to the vehicle, everything else will be stock. So let me make that swap and weigh it, and then we'll put these on. Here we are with stock wheels, tires. So we are at 0. So that looks like about 102 millimeters. So that'll be our stock track width. All right, time for the baseline weigh-in. Stock, no battery. So we've got rear bias at 53%. We're sitting at 244.5 grams. Let's flip over to ounces. 8.6 ounces without the battery. So a stock JLU without the battery is 7.3 ounces. Flip back and we'll add the battery. Okay, now I've got the battery placed in there, and just let it settle again. But I believe it's 267 or 268. Real close to 268 grams. 45, 55. Still got the rear bias, got more rear bias actually, and we are 9.5 ounces overall with the battery. So that's always good to know what the baseline is. So let's get these portals on and we'll see how we end up. All right, the rear is installed and I've got the stock Gladiator wheels, tires on there, zeroed out. So we were 102 millimeters and now it looks like we are, 116, 117, I would say. So what I did was I took the Mofo axle portals and put the stock Gladiator wheels, tires on those so we can get an apples to apples measurement from these as well. So let me zero these out. That's zeroed out. So these are maybe 3 to 4 millimeters. These look like 121, 120, 121. So maybe 4 or 5 millimeters wider, apples to apples, with same stock rim, same tire. So that's good to know. Not a huge difference in the overall track width, but there is some. And that will vary greatly depending on the wheels and tires you use, whether they sit out or sit inward. But that's a good comparison, I think, just of the two. So we'll jump to the front end of this Gladiator and get that other axle on. All right, there you go. Pretty much a side-by-side. The deadbolt tires are a hair taller and skinnier than those stock Gladiator tires. I think your diff height is basically the same, apples to apples. The deadbolt looks a tad bit higher, but that's because of the tires and wheels, I believe. So anyways, this is hooked up. So if I press forward on the new Gladiator, it goes in reverse. But luckily, because there's new electronics, there's now throttle and steering reverse. So rather than switching pins, you can just switch a button and now you are good to go. So portals always change direction of the gearing one more time, so you always have to switch direction of the motor. These look like they're working. Sound smooth. So still seem like they've got some punch on that stock motor. Let's just see how slow we can creep. Not bad. Pretty good for stock electronics. I think with an upgraded brush motor, this is going to be off the chain. So that is your Iceberg Portal axles right there. So I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed with these guys. Just the fact that it's a full assembly, it's basically plug and play, super easy. If you don't know too much about taking things apart, this is a great option for you. You can just a couple screws and swap the whole axle assembly out. And then you've got some spares, full bearings and inner axles and everything. So that's always great. Some extra things to use to build from later. So I guess let me get a body back on here, a bumper, and see what it looks like and get it on the scales for kind of the final weigh-in here. All right, we're gonna get the final weigh-in. See where we ended up here. I believe we were 55-45 rear bias. So this has helped us. It's brought us up to 48 front. And I think we were 267 grams, 268 grams, somewhere around there. So we're 346. Let's flip over to ounces. It's in at 12.3 ounces. So that's our final there. So we did end up with some good front weight bias. That's nice. And all we did was add the portals in. So I guess the final thing is, I wonder if those WT Micro wheels will fit back on this. So let's see if we can take a look. All right, so just one little look here before we attempt those other wheels. You can kind of see the stance there. Definitely got a little bit of a lift going on. So I think we'll pull these bad boys out, see if those will fit on there, see what kind of stance that gives it. Here we go, they fit on there. I did have to drill out the center hole of the wheel with an 1/8 inch bit to get them to slide over the axle. That you can see there, kind of how much portal box is exposed versus the wheel on the stock. And then these expose quite a bit more, so they stick out quite a bit further and they're deeper. So yeah, I mean, that was the only issue, and I kind of thought that so this hole is a little too small. It fits over the threads, but then that hex slides back so far on these axles that there's a lot of the unthreaded axle exposed, and that was too large of a diameter for this to seat fully onto that hex. So with the lock nut on there, it was still very wobbly because that hex was able to slide back and forth behind it. So now it's on there, fully tightened down, and just wiggles fine, and it doesn't, there's no slop on the axle, but there's no bind either. It moves super freely. So I'm gonna go drill out the rest of these wheels and get them mounted up, and we'll take a look at it. And there we are, all mounted up. Look at that, definitely increased the articulation with the widening of the track from the portal axles and these wide wheels. So that's kind of how we're sitting. This thing's looking super mean. Nice stance. Really like the look of these. Love seeing the actual C-arms down here. That looks so sick. So there you go. There's the Iceberg RC fully assembled portal axles. So hope you enjoyed, maybe learned something, and check them out. They may be sold out, but I'm sure they'll be making more.